All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Very good. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly show what I've been working on downstream in Maestro. And we discussed this before when, a few months back actually, when it was still a topic, how to extend the Envoy filter API. Well, actually, that's what came of it. Before it, we were talking about how to create, or what kind of API to create to enable WASM extensions to proxy and to Istio in general. And I mentioned back then that I'm not entirely happy with the Envoy filter approach, because I wanted something that was hands-on and easy to use and doesn't require users to know the internals of Istio as much as, knowing the name of the WASM filter within Envoy that is used, and knowing the structure of the filter config of Envoy. So I wanted something that's really easy. That's just you create a custom resource and you have an extension going. So I just want to show you real quick what we have now, or we're planning to release in the 2.0 of Maestro. So I have a control plane running. I have an HTTP bin running. I'll zoom in real quick. And I have an extension that I wrote, which is really simple. The only thing it does is add a header to the response. So it's HTTP only, and it basically adds a custom header to the HTTP response. And the value of the header is what you put in the config. So this is what the custom resource looks like that we're using. As you can see, it's fairly simple. So you define a config, you tell it where to find the image that contains the extension. So this is similar to what Solo.io have done. So basically, it's using a container image to ship the extension. It has the WASM module and some metadata. It's not the same format as Solo.io, but we're planning to be compatible with both. So this is something that we're using for now, and we'll be shipping as a tech preview in the upcoming 2.0 release. Okay, I can send you more details on the image format later, but the important part is really this service mesh extension resource. So there's a phase, which is pretty much like what we have in the Envoy filter now, where we can add things into specific parts of the filter chain by selecting a phase. Then there's something that we don't have in Envoy filter, which is a priority. So the higher the priority, the earlier in the filter chain's phase this will be added. So if you have two extensions with this that are in this phase, the one with the higher priority will be injected first in the filter chain, and the one with the lower priority after. If it's the same, I think I implemented something that it's based on the name or something. So it's still deterministic. And then you have the workload selector, which is pretty much the same as an Envoy filter resource. So we can quickly curl this, and you see it's a normal HTTP bin, and the returned headers are fairly normal. And now I can basically apply this to the test namespace where HTTP bin is running, and then because the workload selector, it will select that workload, and we can curl again. It's not there yet, probably still downloading the image. And then when we have it, it says custom header test. So basically behind the scenes, this has now, there's two components to this. There's the WASM cache here that will actually go download the container image and make the WASM module available within the mesh. And then there's a patch to IstioD that will, so this component then writes to the status of this resource. We can actually check that here. So you see the status below here. You can see the container SHA. You can see the SHA of the WASM module. It's ready. and there's a URL where you can fetch, where the proxies can fetch the WASM module. So whenever there's a service mesh extension with ready true and a URL, Istio will actually pick that up and distribute it to the proxies based on the workload labels when they match. And this is also done before evaluating Envoy filters, so that as a power user, you still have the possibility to change the config that's generated by Istio. So if you want to have, if you want to configure something about this WASM filter that is not offered by this resource, for example, runtime is currently not offered, you can do that using a normal Envoy filter that will actually match this thing in the filter chain. You can manipulate it. And yeah, that's just about what I wanted to show. I just wanted to show this to you guys and figure out, is this something that you can see us wanting for upstream as well? Because I would be very interested to actually bring something like this upstream. I know there's work ongoing for a extension server that I've seen that works a bit differently than what I've done, but the internals are not as important to me as the API. If we could have something like this, I think that would be amazing, because it enables a very different usage of extensions than having to tell people, you have to use this Envoy filter, and you basically have to make manual patches to the Envoy config that's generated. That doesn't feel like real first-class support to me. And I wanted something that is a first-class API that makes it quick and easy to actually deploy an extension. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not even 10 minutes, I guess.
I think this looks. I mean, this does look. This definitely looks very, very user friendly, and I mean, yeah, we definitely want this in Istio, right? Like, not exactly in this implementation or this form, but like something that's more consumable, like you have in your API. So I'm definitely very supportive of like having something like this. I think the challenge is going to be deciding all the stuff that we have to decide for all other APIs as to how do overrides work, and what happens when multiple workloads are selected by the same. It's kind of the same thing that Envoy filter itself has, right? This is essentially doing the same thing, and it's abstracting it one level higher. But I think, like, from usability perspective, this is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I can write a doc that that basically outlines what I have in mind. As I said, the implementation is not as important to me. I don't want to push a certain implementation or anything, but I would really like us to have an easily consumable API like this. But for that, I mean, a lot of things have to fall in place, right? We have to, if we want to use a container image format, we have to agree on a format. There has to be a deployment mechanism to make it available to proxies, which could be the extension server that's in the proxy repo. Yeah, so there's a few things, right? And of course, as you said, the behavior of the resource itself. How does it behave when there's multiple of them and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think, like, a part of it is since Solo has started the spec, right? Like, agreeing on that spec that includes all the metadata that we want, and just kind of everyone agreeing on that would be, I think, like, one of the easier directions to take. But yes, like, those are exactly the kinds of things that we need to solve. And Solo has this one is using, you have your own HTTP server running in the cluster, right?
Right.
Like a WASM, yeah. Okay, so an in cluster cache but it is not a daemon set. It's just a regular service.
No, it's just a regular service.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not a daemon set.
Yeah, so I think comparing, like having a write-up of just the two different approaches as sort of evidence of what's being done and informing an Istio approach at a high level, right? And then we can dig into the specs on the image format and how the bits get served, right? I think would be a great start.
All right, yeah, I'll write something up. I've been quite busy actually implementing this, and we're about to ship the version that contains this, so I didn't have much time the past few weeks, but I'll write something up and I'll present it here.
Do you have a community, a user community of this API in mind? Is that something we could get feedback on too as you roll that out?
Oh, sorry, what do you mean by a user community in mind?
Well, I was just wondering, are there people that are that are going to use this, and can we get feedback on how they liked it, what their experiences with it? Is there a process that we could sort of harvest that information from as we design?
Yeah, hopefully we'll be able to. So we have an internal team, the 3-scale team, and they're currently using a mixer adapter to connect Istio to 3-scale, and they are in the process of migrating to a WASM filter, and they will be using this API basically to let users install their adapter into the mesh. So we'll have kind of a dog fooding mechanism in place. So they will be using this. They will also probably find some loose ends and problems with it. And yeah, it's going to be tech preview in our upcoming version. And so that means we don't have strict guarantees on the API. We're open to changes. And then for the next minor version after that, we want to have something that is stable. And ideally, I would like us to have something that is in sync with upstream. So yeah, I will very much carry like all the learnings over to this group, if that's what you'd like to see.
Yeah, I think that'd be super useful. I don't know what other opinions on that are, but I would like to see that. I'd be curious about it.
Yeah, and then we should put this on for 1.9 roadmap to basically have this functionality in upstream Istio, right? Like maybe not in the exact same form, but essentially this functionality in Istio itself. So I think that that aligns with even Daniel's goals, right? Of having close, having it aligned with upstream.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool.
Okay, well, thank you. That was super interesting and much better than our typical just look at docs meeting moments. Does anyone else have anything else they want to share with the group while we're all here? Okay. The only other thing I have on the agenda really is just reminding everyone to please take a look at the Telemetry API proposal. I'm going to start circulating it to a broader Istio audience soon, just because we were supposed to have this done by 1/8. And so I want to get to a good spot in the next couple of weeks. And I know, Niraj, you had added some comments this morning, and I haven't had a chance to fully digest them, but I would welcome many more comments on that.
Yeah, it's looking in good shape. My broader comment is about blending of concerns between the operator and the application owner role here, assuming this API is more focused towards a namespace or a workload owner, which I think that's what you're trying, right? So address my comments and then we can also chat offline.
Okay. Sounds good. And then I think it was a nice segue, Ndar, from the previous conversation about what to do for 1.9 and what we want to try and achieve, I threw down some thoughts to sort of scaffold the discussion, but I'm very much interested in what others want to see out of 1.9 release, and things that we should try and shoot for this holiday season, basically. So I'll open the floor for discussion there.
So I think the out of mesh telemetry, half of it is done in this release, right? The other half still remains. The out of mesh source.
Yeah, I mean, we need to evaluate whether we want, like, how much do we want to achieve the other side, right? It's going to be a quite big effort. I mean, adding the central, like adding the metadata query support into the seems like a heavy lift. So I mean, it's going to take like a release or two to finish that and add quite a lot of complexity. So I mean, it's definitely a great to have, but I'm not sure what do you think to add this. I mean, does the value justify the effort for it? I mean, so far, all the community, all the issue we get from GitHub is about client-side missing metadata, because client-side captures all the requests failure that doesn't reach server. So it is kind of more important than server-side missing metadata. So that's why I think having the cluster endpoint label would be great for 1.8. But I'm not sure how much, like, at least I don't see much issue coming from GitHub complaining about missing client metadata as server currently. So what do you guys think?
I agree with you, Peter. That's why I think we were focusing on getting this half in. I mean, if you're suggesting a wait and watch strategy here, so we can see if this use case is emerging and then decide either mid 1.9 or after 1.9, that seems very reasonable to me,
Okay.
at least.
Okay.
But we should let Doug and Mandar and others also loop in their thoughts, bring in their thoughts.
Yeah, I think wait and watch is fine, right? We
Okay.
have it's just that we had this feature in Mixer from the get-go, and then we lost it. So that's kind of one angle. But yeah, I would agree. Like, if someone starts complaining a lot, then we can.
Yeah, we haven't done. Sorry, go ahead, Doug.
I was gonna say, I haven't looked at the issue that was opened related to this. Was that only client side, or was it source side in terms of the nature of the actual issue? That's the one thing I want to make sure. Like, if we say we're gonna wait and see, but we already have evidence, that's the only thing I'd worry about. But I can't recall.
I think most of them is just about client-side missing metadata. I can double check, but I don't remember. At least from GitHub, I don't see any complaint about server missing metadata yet. So
Yeah, I mean, if you bring back a list of issues, maybe or just write it in this doc and say 95% of them are talking about client, that pretty much will satisfy Doug's concern here.
Yeah. Okay. I will gather that.
The config annotation of metrics, we have pushed it out, then dropped it.
What do you mean by that? Mandar, config annotation of metrics?
So being able to being able to tie metrics with virtual services, destination rules, like configuration artifacts.
I fundamentally just don't agree with that idea. I think we are mixing desired behavior with runtime behavior, and metrics is supposed to be runtime behavior. I don't see how this information can be helpful without the customer having a backup history or a time machine for the config itself.
Well, but many vendors do have backup history of config itself, right? So if we have a way in Istio to use whatever facilities are available outside Istio, then it is useful. And actually, even without that, it is useful, right? Because you want to know, like, let's say that you create a destination rule, and you expect all the traffic to go through that destination rule, and then you find out that none of it is, or like not enough of it is, or something like that, and like that would be a reason for you to go and see if something is being overwritten or something like that.
So Mandar, that use case is for just-in-time debugging and not looking over history. So we can have different solutions for that particular problem, right? Because
trace is what Doug just added here, correct?
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's the key thing that we should understand. Are we trying to help just-in-time debugging where you don't understand whether your particular configuration is taking effect or not? Or we want to solve customers looking back in time and saying, okay, at this point of time, which configuration was in effect for this particular request? Is that fair to say that these are the two different categories?
Yep.
Would it be good to have a use case around some of this stuff so that we could say, this is what we're trying to do, and then we can drive into solutions? Because this is the way we're talking, it's sounding like this is a solution and we're finding the problem where it applies, or at least it's not clear to me where it applies.
Yeah, we can transform this into how can you figure out from, I guess, how can you figure out from telemetry which configuration affected
the traffic,
affected your traffic flow, right?
Yeah.
Now, this is tying two things into one. If that's not a use case that anyone really wants, we shouldn't take on that burden. I do feel like some people have asked for it. I just don't know how actually useful it is. It's kind of complicated to get a good use case out of this, to be honest. Right? You need something like a stack driver or whatever Google's equivalent is for time machine.
There is some overlap with the work has been suggested also for simulating Istio, right? Like if you could somehow configure a bunch of envoys with configuration and test what the impact of a configuration would be. I don't know how easy that's going to be to do, but isn't that something that the networking group is looking at a little bit too?
I haven't heard of it in the recent past. The only thing I knew was adding user-provided configuration metadata to the lowered Envoy configuration. So a route might say that a virtual service X is being used to configure it, for example.
Well, we've had that for a while, right?
Yeah, we've had that for a while, but it's basically like tying that to any form of telemetry. That's like that part is missing, and I think tracing, I agree, kind of answers the question more head on, because you can actually force a client-side trace, and then it will go through the mesh, and it will tell you, which exact configuration artifacts were involved in making that happen.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it from the other side, right? It's if I have all this telemetry about what's happened in my mesh, right, and what traffic looks like, and I have a config that I want to apply, it'd be nice to be able to simulate or somehow understand what the impact should look like before applying, and then you do some sort of comparison. I mean, that's super difficult.
So Linkerd has this feature, which is that you can actually put override configuration as a header in the request itself. And then as the request goes through the mesh, that override which is carried with the request will take over and like do something else. But it's a very cool demo feature. I'm not sure how much people will actually use it, right? I mean, we have like Canary, CI/CD, like all kind of more mainstream ways of doing the same thing.
But is some of that just a function of how complex it is, or how complex your mesh configuration can be, to the point where you get to the point where you're really not sure what's going on and there are too many hoops to jump through to figure it out mentally?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a band-aid for the problem that you're saying, Rob, that people are scared to make changes because those changes are complex to understand, and then once you apply, you don't know what will break.
I mean, I think there is a disconnect between what's happened in the configuration and what's happening in the telemetry, right? So it's pretty easy to go back into Prometheus and look at historical traffic, for example, or response times or whatever it is. But tying that anomalies that you may see there to the configuration at the time is the problem. I don't think that it's necessary to try to tie config to the metrics perspective. I mean, tie them directly together with IDs or whatever it might be, or versioning or whatever. But the ability to create a similar timeline of config change would be very useful.
Right, but that part is kind of outside Istio.
Yeah.
That's
I think
that's like ACM. Yeah, that's like config management.
And most of the vendors have it as an additional solution, right, Mandar?
Yep. Jay, what were you thinking of?
Well,
like,
I'm just
elaborate more.
Well, I mean, I'm thinking about, for example, like if you go in Kiali today, you can do like what we call a graph replay, right? So you can go back, you can pick some time period in the past that you want to re-examine over and over, and you can watch it happen, right? Almost like a a video recording, and you can see, for example, here's the time where all of a sudden my traffic turned red. What we don't have today is this other view, timeline view perspective, where you could say, oh, look, at the same time, there was a change to the virtual service, which is what I think you're trying to do here, right?
Yes, but actually the way you put it is actually like cleaner, and it's more aligned with like automatic configuration management, where the event stream of configuration changes have their own time series, and then you can reconstruct the state based on those events at any given time, and you already have a time series of the metrics themselves, and then tie them together.
Right. So that the tying happens more at the consumer side, not
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So the question is there something? Is there some primitive that we're missing in Istio that we need to provide, or do we already have everything that we need, and then it's up to vendors and other integrations to build that? Like, I think Doug, you're trying to say something.
Well, yeah, this reminds me of, work that was sort of done a while back on config state metrics, right? So Istio could provide something that's watching and providing, virtual service metrics and destination rule metrics thanks for all the configs on the state, and that would give you stuff inside of Prometheus and not require some other vendor to provide that sort of information for everyone. And we could go back to doing something like that. That was originally going to be part of Galley, and then that disappeared. So we don't have that same information hook anymore, but we could build that controller pretty easily using, the client Go libraries that exist, if that was of interest and of utility.
To me, it sounds like a useful thing. Trying to tie everything together in a single telemetry entry sounds potentially difficult. I'm not sure, Mandar, what you were supposed to say.
No. I think I think that for the actual use case that we just described, having two separate streams that you can correlate post facto is very much useful. And like Doug said, config state metrics. So is that something we want to consider for 1.9? I think I would like, just like this whole section, right? We probably need to start with gathering how much user appetite there is. So I think there is some pre-work that needs to happen before we convince ourselves that this is worth doing.
What's the best way to do that work? Do you want to raise that at community meetings?
So we should raise it at the community meeting and the TOC. If there is another survey that's going out, and now we are going to have them quarterly. So I don't know if this level of granularity is okay. If we can frame the question in a reasonably general way, then we should actually put it on the survey as well.
Okay. Are there other items that we want to focus on in 1.9? I feel like there were things from 1.8 that we sort of took half measures on. Let's scroll back through. Well, Niraj, is Niraj still here? Is he?
He had to drop at 9:30.
There's something that he was working up, writing. Oh, metric expiry. Is that something that we still are interested in tackling more?
We are. Peter or Quad, any? Like, I don't think we made any progress on that this time, did we? Actually,
no.
Wait, no. Well, Peter, you have your change from consensus came in, right?
Yeah, but that is for stacker. I think we still need an Envoy for stats.
Right. Okay.
There are also internal caches and our plugins that don't expire. So it's
okay, but that's okay. But that's a simpler thing to fix then. our own caches don't expire is completely under our control. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's
Yeah.
operation across the board, not just output.
Right. So I think that our stats cache, if it reaches a certain size, like drops half of the entries or something like that. But maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, we should definitely have that. Yeah. Is there anything that we need for multi-cluster that we don't already have?
So it was in that other doc I wrote on sort of long-term changes to the metrics that we deploy. I think we should make the cluster labels permanent in 1.9 and not just if you are in multi-cluster scenarios. I think that should be something. I mean, it's a small change, but I think that's the only thing in multi-cluster that I'm aware of, and maybe some documentation. So.
Okay.
Do you want to take some time for addressing open P0s from prior releases? I feel like we've got a lot of backlog issues, and I don't know if we ever prioritize them appropriately. So I'll put a plug in for that there, but I don't know if there's a good way of doing better triage on those issues.
Okay, so we should work offline to get to like move the actual triage issues up here and left over from previous release, or well, this release. The ingress focused dashboard, is that okay?
I'll send you the gRPC metrics, the
Right.
streaming stuff.
Yes. Those will be ready, right?
Those will be ready.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure. Is this 1.9?
Yeah, 1.9.
The data is ready. I'm not sure it's going to make it for the 1.8 in terms of dashboard, but whichever release it makes, somewhere has to be mentioned. And I think the beta transport, the HTTP2 tunneling, might be finally coming. I don't know. Is it coming in 1.9? If it's coming in 1.9, we should probably, it will have an impact on telemetry, so we'll have to accommodate for that.
Yeah, there was a work item of alignment with BTS in 1.8, but that was not required. So yeah, it will be there.
Yeah, I think we've had that as a work item for the last 5 releases. So it'd be nice to figure out if that's actually landing.
Should we have a
Anything
go
else?
for Blossom? I mean, seems like we haven't mentioned Blossom. Should we like track more specifically what kind of goal we want to reach for Blossom? Like, or should we decide that in later meeting? I mean, preference distribution monitoring all seems important, but seems like we don't have a very specific like quantitative number like for distribution, like making ECDS ready or not causing delay or something like that, or some X seconds of delay, or for perf how much memory we are going to like memory override we're going to introduce with WASM module, or things like that. I think we need to refine this goal a little bit. Otherwise, I think the WASM extension will slice another release.
I mean, we have some external dependencies there, but yes. So there is high memory usage is definitely one of the kind of big deep work items.
Yeah.
Which we should track here. I mean, like some people here are involved in that. So okay, so yeah, I agree. Let's track it. It is being tracked in other places, but I think it should have visibility here.
Yeah, and I think Doc mentioned a good point. I mean, we need to have something like VM and CNI where they have on Monte Carlo, they have the beta promotion plan that lists all the work items and tracking issues and like the progress on them and the target release, etc. That would be really helpful, I think. Yeah, I mean, that's all for me. I think WASM needs to be caught out a little bit more.
Do we have any goals to enable WASM by default?
So
For the
we don't have so not for telemetry. Like there is not an impending goal or a need to enable it for telemetry. What we need to do, the goal is for WASM to be consumable for the kind of more heavily used or the more use cases which appeal to WASM, which are like either bespoke extensions that customers write on their own or some vendor extensions. So it has to be so the point is, I don't think we will make a change in Istio to say, oh, now telemetry is all WASM, right?
Okay.
That's I don't see that as an explicit goal for a while. It was a goal in the past, but it's no longer a goal.
Is it never a goal, or it's just not a short-term goal?
It's not. So if it is a long-term goal, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
But it's kind of long enough that we don't necessarily have to track it here. Rob, I think Rob asked a question.
At least for C++ and Rust, I think the two-chain is good, mostly good. I mean, it should be ready for production usage. But for other language like Golang, the two-chain might not be as mature. I mean, lots of people are using Rust and C++ compiled by some module for their web application, I think. So I assume that it should be good for us as well.
Yeah, I guess my question there was more, what languages are our users most predisposed to, right? So if they were writing legacy Envoy plugins, that would make sense. C++ is there, but what are the developers that would be doing this? Are they going to be coming from a C++ or a Rust background, or are they just kind of forced into that because those are the most mature tool chains?
Yeah, no one has a Rust background, so that's but I think
those are the most mature tool chains, right? Are C++ and Rust. So
right. So for small mapping type plugins, right, which are connecting a few things and doing some simple manipulation, at least I expect more people to use assembly script, because like that's what is closer to JavaScript. You don't want to write C++ code to like manipulate some headers, do some string processing on it, and then set some other headers. Like if that's all you are going to do. The more involved plugins could be in any of these languages, but it's kind of ironic that the two least approachable languages are the two that have the best tooling right now. So I think, unfortunately, that's where we are. And like TinyGo support is kind of a little bit away. AssemblyScript support is actually also maturing, but I have not, like, I don't have any firsthand experience of it. I've just been watching kind of what's going on Solo to know that AssemblyScript is kind of coming up.
You know, I was really just asking the question to put some visibility around it, because as we move to WASM, right, if that's what we're expecting users to do, then we're putting some sort of burden on them based on whatever tool chains are available.
Yep.
Anything else we should look at or talk about today, or should we sort of take a break and try and put these all together for 2 weeks from now?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. And I told some people this yesterday, but I've been making an attempt to do bug triage, but there's a lot of issues in GitHub. So if any maintainers on the call have free cycles and see issues that aren't appropriately labeled or prioritized, please take a stab at them. Try and get them organized. That's a big push. Something like 2/3 of the issues in GitHub weren't triaged as of yesterday or 2 days ago. So we'd like to get that sorted. So I promised the working group leads I would make a plug for that here in the this working group. So please take a look if you have a second. I'd like to avoid having to spend a whole working group meeting going through them together. So if you have some time and some cycles on the side, please take a look.
All right. Thank you.
Yep, that's it. Okay, thanks everyone.
Bye-bye.